Guys, we are back with some Lamento. I have not played in quite a while, so I have to get back into it again. Let me check real quick if the audio is okay. Should not be too loud, I think. Good. So then let's continue. Oh. His low whisper tickled the fur of Konoe's ears like a feather. The shaman's pupils were thin slits and the green eyes gradually narrowed. For some reason, Konoe's eyes were drawn to those before him, even though a chill ran down his spine. Konoe felt like his own pupils were coaxed into narrowing, and a strange shock ran through him as though his fur was being stroked the wrong way. Before long, green light colored his vision and swayed like a living creature, blocking Konoe's view and wrapping around him. Konoe's eyes grew wide in surprise. The green film cleared to reveal the smiling shaman. Both of his hot hands were set free. In the palm of his hand, sweat had formed.
何か見えたのか4つの影4つの影
4つの影
お主の魂を取り囲むように4つの影が見えた
Makes sense.
あれは猫ではない
猫ではない Does make sense. We have snakes in there, snakes. He was shocked at these words. Soon unpleasant thoughts crossed through Konoe's mind. The smile had vanished from the shaman's face.
あれは猫ならざるものもっと邪悪なもっと純粋な念を抱いた魂じゃおそらく悪魔じゃないか
Konoe blurted out, leaning forward.
その通り
Rai, who had kept quiet all along, furrowed his brows. Was it true after all? Konoe was convinced. What did these four shadows mean?
まさか悪魔が4匹もいるっていうのか今のところそうなるな4色の異なった強大な魂がお主を取り巻いておる
The fur on Konoe's tail bristled on end. Of those he had fought, there were a red shadow, a yellow, and a yellow shadow, so this meant there were still two more to come. Oh. He didn't even say two. Well, I guess Konoe is good at swallowing.
お主の存在が少々特殊なこともあるのかもしれんがやはり裏で糸を引く存在がおるそれもまたお主の魂を捉えておる大きな影の仕業じゃそいつは何者なんだそれは私にもわからん
Just who was it and why? Rushing through his head were questions that were unanswered. Konoe felt dizzy.
だが見えたのは悪いことばかりではない。お主を加護する者もまたおるようじゃ。加護？ああ、さほど大きくはないが、強い力を持った魂じゃ。
Oh, sorry.
悪魔は呪いに何か関係があるのか
Well?
ないというわけではなさそうじゃな。本体がどこにいるかわかるかまさか戦う気か
Yeah, sure, fighting them.
その大きな影とやらがわからん以上わかるものから片付けていくしかない分身らしい影は見ている本体もどこかにいるはずだ本気で言っとるのか
I mean...
嘘をついてどうする悪魔を知らんわけではなかろう無論承知の上だ
The shaman covered his mouth with his hands, but still his laughter escaped. I just remembered that I actually wanted to get something to drink before I started recording. I guess I have to do that later. I guess this part will not be too long. Rai turned a fierce look to him in response to his rather eerie laughter.
いや、愉快愉快。面白いの。
面白い。
無謀にも程があるわ。悪魔を相手に挑もうとはな。気に入った。
The shaman's voice became a loud guffaw? Guffaw? I don't know that word. And Rai's displeasure intensified so much that Konoe could feel it. Konoe was genuinely worried Rai would just lash out and take the shaman down. The shaman extended his arm to where Konoe had entered.
この森を抜けると小さな村がある。その村を通り過ぎて森へ入り、奥へ進めば4色の光に満ちた地に出る。私に見えるのはその場所じゃ。
The shaman's green eyes gazed at Rai, then moved to Konoe.
このぶっきらぼうなオスはお主と親しい間柄なのか？随分と献身的なように見えるが。
That is only because he won something from me. If he didn't want anything from me, he would not be so persistent. And I do not like him and don't get along with him. Nuh-uh.
いや、そいつはサンガだ。
Oh! With an amused voice, the shaman looked at Konoe again in surprise and smiled.
なるほど、サンガとは本当に珍妙な星のもとに生まれついておるの。
Indeed. Konoe felt complex feelings and turned away, meaninglessly staring at the trinkets on the altar. He had been sure that by listening to the shaman's words, he would be another step closer to the answer of this riddle of a curse. But instead, the mystery just turned into an even greater blackness, approaching Konoe as if it was waiting to swallow him. How would they even fight the devils?
そう案じるな。お主の歌はきっとこの世界を揺さぶるだろう。
Oh, for real? Not sure. Konoe turned to see the shaman gently smiling. It was timed as if he had completely read his mind. Shake the world? His song? The shaman's gaze turned into Rai's direction.
それにしても、お主の慎重すぎるその性格。なるほどな。
Rai paled slightly.
見たのか。見えたな。まあ、光あらば影もまた必ずある。誰にでもあることよ。
Rai's expression turned into one of anger for the first time. He gave the shaman a powerful glare. The cat must have seen something about Rai. His past? While Konoe felt that he wanted to know, he was hesitant to ask.
さあ、これ以上教えられることはもうないぞ。行くならとっとと行くがいい。
With a flutter of a hand, the shaman exhaled a weary sigh. Judging by his tone and attitude, this cat couldn't have been who he seemed. Just how old was he?
行くぞ。
Rai abruptly took his leave. Before he did so too, Konoe turned back to the shaman.
金は？金？ああ、必要ない。この祠に住んでもうずいぶん長いこと経つ。金など宝の持ち腐れじゃ。それに。
With an amused smile, he faintly purred while swaying his tail.
正直、長すぎる時に退屈しておったところでな。楽しいものを見せてもらった。こっちが礼をしたいくらいじゃ。
そうか。
これから気が遠くなるような災難が降りかかるかもしれん。迷い、 不安に陥ることもあるじゃろう。
Oh, don't you worry, I've got anxiety without this.
だが揺るぎなきものが必ずある。それを忘れないことじゃ。
Only now did those green eyes seem to have a sincere light. Konoe stopped while he was still right behind Rai, looked back and nodded firmly. Gonna hide my mouse behind me. A thick scent of greenery struck his nose when he left the shrine. The day was almost over, but the light outside was still bright, making Konoe narrow his eyes. He realized they'd been in the shrine for a very long time. While they walked through the forest back to the city, Rai suddenly opened his mouth. Oh my god.
呪術師の言っていた場所へ行く。
信用できないんじゃなかったのか。
他に手がかりもない。
罠だったら。
その時はその時だ。そう言ったのはお前だろ。
True. When they reached the town, the mass of cats and strange buildings spread out before them died with the light of dusk. It was like a strange mass, writhing in a sea of red. Writhing? The shaman's story was confusing, his words inscribed into Konoe's mind. However, their meaning gradually seeped into the depths of his chest as time went by. Several devils, and an existence that gripped his future. It seemed like an unbelievable story, but he couldn't imagine that the impossibly old shaman was lying to them, either. Perplexed, he didn't know where to go from here. He couldn't think clearly. Letting out a melancholy sigh, Konoe returned to the inn with Rei. I apologize, my tongue seems to be fucking stuck today. They passed by the vacant reception desk and went up to the second floor, entering their room. Inside, the room was dyed in vermilion by the setting moon. Rai stepped to the window and peering down at the town, he opened his mouth. Wow, he's opening it quite often.
今
目的がはっきりした以上、こうしていても無駄なだけだ。それに表通りのど真ん中で狙われて騒ぎでも起こしてみろ。街に。
Wait. I wanted to tune down the volume a bit more again, but I forgot the key once again. Nope. Ah shit. I skipped something. This was certainly right, but there was one cat who crossed Konoe's mind. Tokino. C. Ah, it was C. Okay. Music's still a tad loud again. He gave them shelter, but more than that, any other cat would have become distant upon knowing the truth about Konoe. But, as always, Tokino welcomed him with a smile. Konoe couldn't just leave without saying anything. But on the other hand, he also thought that maybe it was better not to get Tokino involved. He didn't have the right or the will to disturb Tokino's peaceful life. He didn't want to involve him. Tokino might already have been in danger by helping him to hide Konoe and Rai. Still, if they left now, Konoe didn't know when he'd see him once more. He might never meet Tokino again. Konoe wanted to at least say goodbye. After thinking about it, he decided to go meet Tokino, hesitant to leave without another word. If they could just meet and talk face to face, he could leave the town.
出る前に寄りたいところがある。
時のか。
分かってたのか。
Of course.
当たり前だ。
Rai raised his chin a bit and scoffed, his tail flicking.
行くならさっさとしろ。
Rai finished speaking and headed for the door. Konoe followed behind him. At the reception desk of the first floor, there was a cat who was substituting as the inn clerk. They finished their lodging prices final calculations at the desk and moved to leave town. On the main street, the cats busily rushed to and fro. It was just like always. Everyone carried packages in their arms. It was almost night, so this must have been the time where the cats thrived the most. Rai's white tail flickered occasionally like a signal. Trying his best not to get lost, Konoe followed it through the crowded street. After they walked for a while, they entered a side road that continued to the other side of the town. Moving on to a somewhat broader path, he saw Tokino's small but cozy house. When he knocked on the door, he heard the shuffling sound of footsteps on the other side.
どちら様?
The door opened just a sliver, and it was Tokino who peeked out for an instant from the gap. His eyes went wide with surprise when he saw Konoe and Rai.
あ、この絵たちか。なんだ、どうしたの？わざわざ来てくれるなんて。
Tokino smiled broadly. Normally he'd feel relief, but now that smile roused bitter feelings in Konoe.
いや、そろそろ町を立つから挨拶にと思って。今から？
Tokino blinked several times, then nodded.
ずいぶん急だな。なんだ、もっと早くに言ってくれれば見送る準備とかしたのに。
He's so sweet.
ごめん。いや、いいよ。謝ることじゃないだろ。いろいろ事情があるんだろうし。
I guess. Konoe was filled with apologetic feelings as Tokino shook his head. Though he was glad he couldn't just happily laugh it off. He could, not couldn't. It also hurt in a way.
ランセンには来るんだよな。そのつもりだ。その時は絶対に顔見せてくれよ。じゃなきゃ、コノエは死んだって思うからな。
Well,
ひどいな。
well, indeed.
ひどいだろ?
They burst out in laughter. Konoe did miss him. Konoe would miss him. Konoe'd miss him. Reading is not my strong suit today. After he stared at Tokino's face, Konoe gently pushed the tip of his nose against his shoulder. He felt Tokino nuzzle his shoulder in turn.
気をつけて。無事を祈ってる。ああ、Tokinoも。
They gave each other a soft purr. When they pulled away, Tokino was smiling, his tail raised and waving left to right. Konoe raised his own tail slightly in response.
行くぞ。
He turned back with Rai. Looking over his shoulder, he flicked his tail one more time at Tokino. Flick, flick. There was a suffocating feeling in his chest as though it was being tightened with this slender thread, but Konoe kept walking without looking back. They stocked up lightly at the street vendors before they left town, then headed towards the other side of the grove and set foot in the forest again. The forest wasn't dangerous like the void forest, but Rai lit a torch to help guide them through the dark gloom of night. Konoe disliked fire, but he didn't try to move away or raise any suspicion, thinking he'd be even more aggravated if Rai discovered his weakness. He wondered if they'd reach the path to the shaman's shrine soon. It was so dark he could barely see the rock face to their left through the shadows. Did the place the shaman spoke of truly exist? As they walked endlessly through the night forest, such thoughts floated through Konoe's mind. If the shaman was lying, they would have come this far for nothing. But they had no choice but to believe him and continue on. For a while, Konoe thought about the dangerous uncertainty of their trip.
今日はここまでだ。
Rai said without turning back. He moved off the road to walk further into the glade. Stopping on an inconspicuous path a little ways from the main road, they gathered nearby branches and leaves and put a torch in the middle of them. Fire! The flame flared upwards for an instant, then fell quiet again. Although Konoe thought that the blazing flames were beautiful, he felt a slight fear. While Konoe listened to the sounds of crackling fire, Rai sat down. Konoe also sat down a short distance away. For a while they sat together in silence, only their ears flickering in every direction, alert to their surroundings. He was certain that there was nothing particularly suspicious around. They made sure they could hear no suspicious sounds like footsteps or gloves curling around weapons. He trailed his tongue along his arm to groom, unintentionally closing his eyes in comfort. Feeling like it had been a long time since he'd done this, Konoe carefully licked himself. He glanced up to see Rai grooming as well. While grooming, he wasn't as concerned about the fire. Just then, something pierced the silence.
火が苦手なのか?
Of course he knew. Konoe was about to lick by his elbow when he halted. Did you know you cannot lick your elbow? He looked at Rai, who had already finished grooming and was now staring at him. Under the impression that he hadn't noticed, Konoe's heart leapt. Konoe turned to the side and pretended to be at ease so Rai couldn't notice his anxiousness.
別に。
避けて歩いていただろう。今もだ。ま、別にだからなんだというわけではないがな。
Then why did you? Even if Rai didn't mean it that way, Konoe felt a little agitated at his mocking tone.
腹は
別に。
Suspecting that Rai scoffed at him, Konoe turned with a strong look when something flew towards him. He quickly grabbed it. It was a dried fruit the size of his fist. Rai had a fruit in his own hand as well, biting into it with a nonchalant face, as if nothing had happened. Slowly, Konoe began to wonder if Rai actually cared about him. Konoe messed with the fruit in his palm for a while, feeling displeased, and bit into it with some reluctance. A sweet and sour flavor spread throughout his mouth. Suddenly feeling very hungry, he quietly continued to eat. In the ensuing silence, Rai stopped eating and looked up. His ears perking up at once, he put his hand on the hilt of his longsword. Konoe's ears shut up as well and surveyed his surroundings. The fur on his tail swelled right away, and tension flooded over him. All of the hair on his body bristled on end. He felt anxious. An intense bloodlust. It was just for an instant, but he definitely felt it. Something was there. Konoe's ears lowered warily, and he slowly drew his sword at his waist. Suddenly, Konoe felt a shock hit his chest. The impact spread and gradually turned to pain. He was tormented by a dull headache and a strange ringing in his ears. Was this empathy? The moment he thought this, a muddy stream of turbulent emotions suddenly flowed to him. His breathing seemed to stop. Feelings of intense rage, the urge to kill. He felt like he was about to be crushed. His lips broke open and he breathed. He knew this. These words suddenly floated through his mind. While enduring this bitter pain and desperation, he thought that he felt this sensation before. From where? From whom? Suddenly, the thicket beside them shook. Asato? May it be Asato, please? A shadow blacker than the darkness. As he stared wide-eyed, it jumped and attacked Rai with spectacular speed. Vast quantities of bloodlust seemed to surge over his skin like an electric current. It is Asato! I recognize his nose! An intense, high-pitched sound threatened to shatter his eardrums. Rai poised his sword horizontally and took the hit that came down from above. The black shadow bared his fangs and gave a roar that shook the earth. Konoe frowned at that figure. It couldn't be... No. There was no mistaking it. The owner of these emotions. Yeah, my boy!
Asato!
My boy's back! Look at him! The ears of the black shadow twitched when Konoe called out his name. Rai pushed back with his sword and jumped backwards as soon as the shadow dropped his guard. But the shadow was quick to react, and it immediately pressed back towards Rai. His long black tail fluttered behind him like an after-image. Silver was enveloped in darkness.
Yamero!
Konoe shouted, feeling like he was burning up with aggravation. As if in response, his chest ached. The shadow was just about to swing his sword down when it stopped moving altogether, as if frozen in time. Rai didn't stop. He plunged into the shadow and... An ear-splitting sound roared once again. Following it was the sound of something falling to the ground. Konoe's eyes opened wide, the figure of a dazed shadow who'd lost his sword reflected in them.
Asato. Asato daro?
The face glaring at Rai now turned around awkwardly. Deep blue eyes slowly focused on Konoe. The stern look on his face relaxed, as his eyebrows arched up in surprise. Arched. The pain of empathy slowly faded into the distance. Konoe exhaled from deep within his chest and sat up. It really was him. No doubt about it. Well, obviously. It was Asato!
どうして
Interrupting a conversation, Rai pointed the tip of his long sword at Asato. In that blue eye, much paler than Asato's, a cold light flickered.
こいつはなんだお前の知り合いか
Konoe nodded and Rai narrowed his eyes slightly.
お前の知り合いは誰彼構わず襲いかかるようなバカなのか
He is a bit of an idiot, yeah. Silently angry at that remark, Konoe turned his eyes to Asato. Far from flinching away from Rai's sword, Asato didn't seem to notice it at all. He furrowed his brows as if holding something back and quietly stared at Konoe.
Konoe.
A husky voice called out his name. Konoe grimaced at the pain in Asato's voice. There seemed to be something odd about Asato. Konoe focused his frantic eyes and looked him over carefully. Asato's chest rose up and down with rough breathing, and one hand was clasped over the opposite shoulder. And Asato was bending forward slightly as if to protect that shoulder. Something dripped to the ground. From its faintly acid scent, Konoe knew it was blood. Asato was injured.
お前怪我してるのか
I mean, you showing those shoulders off with no protection, no, I'm not surprised. As soon as Konoe had asked him, Asato seemed to run out of strength and his large body collapsed to the ground.
Asato.
Rushing up to him, Konoe immediately raised him up in his arms. As if to show his anguish, Asato's brows were knit tight in pain and his lips were parted thinly to let him take rapid, shallow breaths. Looking to the shoulder Asato had held earlier, Konoe saw a wound just as he expected. The exposed skin was torn open and bright red blood overflowed. It seemed like a fresh wound, but it wasn't Rai who injured Asato. Most likely, this was a wound that he suffered before he appeared here.
大丈夫か
You're saying, yeah, while bleeding out like a slaughter pig. Ah. Konoe took out his water flask from the bag he carried on his back and gently washed the wound on Asato's shoulder. Then he removed a dried medical herb and put it in his mouth, chewing it up before applying it to the wound. It was a medical herb often used in Kaoru, and it helped disinfect wounds and curb fevers. When it soaked in, Asato's face stiffened.
しみるか
助けるつもりか。
As Konoe's gaze followed that voice, he saw Rai sheathing a sword, watching coldly.
当たり前だろ
信用できん。捨てておけ。
You can't be trusted!
一度助けられてるそれに今のは怪我をして殺気立ってただけだ多分追われているか何かで
殺すことに何のためらいもない。そういう目をしていた。
Well, then don't give him a reason to!
だから
Almost shouting inadvertently, Konoe pressed his lips tight. Instead, he channeled his strength into his eyes, glaring at Ray.
もういいあんたがなんて言ったって俺はこいつを助ける行きたいならあんた一人で行けばいい
Exactly. Having given his ultimatum, Konoe looked away from Rai and turned to Asato. Asato! He didn't want to know anything more about Togas and Sangas either. Rai could just figure it out himself. In desperation, Konoe was unable to control his anger. Asato had likely fled here after fighting with Kiran pursuers. He had to be exhausted. Konoe couldn't just leave him like this. Hearing a sigh of disgust behind him, Konoe turned around. He matched eyes with Rai, who looked awfully displeased.
バカ猫が揃いも揃って。
Well, I would personally say that's a perfect match. While Asato grimaced in pain, he still bared his fangs at Rai. Dai.
朝ともやめろどうしてってこいつ敵だろ
Bro, two fucking alpha males getting it on, I swear. Ugh. Asato cast a hostile look to Rai. Their dark blue and light blue eyes clashed. Feeling an explosive edginess gathering in the air, Konoe stared at Asato and quietly shook his head.
違う敵じゃない
この絵を連れて行こうとしてたんじゃないのか。
Ah, so this was how it looked in Asato's eyes. That was why he attacked Rai. Grasping the flow of the conversation, Rai arched an eyebrow in disdain.
つくづくバカばかりだな。
やめろよ朝とも落ち着け
Oh boy. Konoe would normally be glad to have met Asato again after he disappeared, but this was the worst possible scenario. For now, Konoe let Asato sit down close to their bonfire. Rai crossed his arms and leaned against a tree trunk in his usual manner.
何があったんだ何か水か食料はいい
Really, are you? Only replying with this, Asato sealed his lips and lowered his head. He didn't seem like he wanted to say anything. While staring at the ground with a sullen look, Konoe suddenly remembered something.
朝とはもう村には帰れないんだよな
True. That was right. He had no other place to go. He was the same as Konoe. Since he'd awaited their reunion, Konoe obviously intended to take Asato with him on his journey. But the problem was Rai. Judging from his reaction just now, he would not be pleased. Seized with heavy feelings, Konoe turned to Rai.
朝とも連れて行くから
おう
Just as he thought, the cold look in Rai's eyes could freeze the air in an instant.
朝とはもう村には戻れない俺と同じだそれにあんたと互角にやり合えるぐらいの腕がある
But we do not want to try that.
だといいがな。
Rai glanced at Asato. Asato scowled and gave a low growl, glaring back at Rai.
お前、嫌なものを感じる。何なんだ、お前。
Stop bitching at each other.
バカ猫に言われたくないな。
Yo, stop insulting!
殺す。
Yo! Stop!
おい。
He put a hand on Asato's chest to keep him from throwing himself at Rai, then turned an accusatory look towards the cat in question. Asato turned to Konoe as if to ask why he was stopped, and Rai just scoffed and turned away. Konoe inadvertently let out a very deep sigh. He felt anxious about the future. His head hurt. Ayo. I think this is a good little break time. Oh man, can I stop fighting? What the hell?